Hello underachievers. So, I got sent this video on Instagram DM. I tried to find who sent it to me, but it was too long ago and I can't find it. So sorry, but whoever sent me this, thank you. I haven't actually watched the video, I'm supposedly reacting to it. All I know is it's about whether the T should be removed from LGBT. So I'm gonna state my opinion before I watch this video and see if this video changes my mind. I don't think it will. But obviously my opinion is that trans people do belong in the LGBT community. They make up the T. Yep. You know, trans women actually started the Stonewall riots, which helped further the rights of LGBT people. You know, because trans people deserve just as many rights as gay people, unless you're like Perez Hilton or something, in which case, you know. And before I get people saying, oh, well, you know, like, being trans isn't a sexuality, and the LGBT community is for like, sexualities. Yes, being trans is not a sexuality. Transsexuality does not actually mean that you're attracted to trans people. Believe it or not, I've had people ask me that. The LGBT community is a community for people that are marginalized because of either their sexuality or their gender identity. So this idea of trans people not belonging in the LGBT community has been around for a while, but I feel like recently what's brought it to light more than before is the fact that there's this new thing called the LGBT Alliance. It's pretty much just an organization of lesbians, gays, and bisexuals who believe that trans people don't belong in the community. And if you do any actual research into the LGBT Alliance, it's not just some nice place where like lesbians, gays, and bisexuals come together and they're like, hey, let's talk about how we can help ourselves. It's pretty much just a place for like transphobes and TERFs to like, you know, just bond. If you look on the Twitter account, their bio is asserting the right of lesbians, bisexuals, and gay men to define ourselves as same-sex attracted. And their pinned tweet is a tweet calling Magdalene Burns magnificent. Now, if you don't know who Magdalene Burns is, she was a TERF. She made a lot of TERFy YouTube videos. Here's a little snippet.
The name he goes under is Gigi Gorgeous. I couldn't let this go without comment.
I fell in love with somebody.
That's nice.
And that person happens to be female.
That person happens to be female? And you happen to be male.
And I will link below a thread where some Twitter user analyzes the followers of LGBT Alliance. They found that there's a massive overlap between people following LGBT Alliance and people following TERF accounts, and there is barely an overlap between people following LGBT Alliance and people who are following, like, LGBT and equality organizations. I'm just gonna be completely honest, I don't buy into the LGBT without the T being anything other than, like, transphobia. It's just kind of disappointing that trans people have fought for gay people's rights for years, and then as soon as gay people are like, hey, we have some rights now, they kind of just put down the trans people. It's like, we don't need you anymore. We got the straight people on our side now. By the way, I'm gay as well as trans, so I don't hate gay people. I just not a fan of the transphobic ones. Just feel like just because you found some level of acceptance doesn't mean that you should, you know, do what the straight people did to you to trans people. So let's watch the video, see what I think. I haven't actually seen it. This will be interesting. And play.
Should the T from LGBT be removed? This is my little collab. I've asked 3 amazing people. They're kind of the excluded members of the LGBT community.
The excluded members?
You can easily be kicked out of the LGBT community if you have the wrong ideas.
See, being kicked out of the LGBT community because you have the wrong ideas isn't really true. It's just like, people, you know, if you say something harmful or you continuously do something that is harmful towards other people within the community, I feel like people within the community aren't going to be like, hey, like, hell yeah, keep doing that. You can have a different opinion to the majority of the people in the LGBT community without putting other people in the community down. I don't have an issue with people having different political opinions to me. I just have an issue when those opinions, you know, on other people.
And I thought it would be perfect to hear those ideas because I like those ideas. So here they are.
No. Yo, no. I should have watched this video before I reacted to it. That's not really how a reaction works, but I should have watched this. Last time I made a video with her in it, I got death threats. A lot of people were like, why did you turn off the comments on your video about her? It was just because comments were full of people calling me a confused lesbian, saying that I should join the 40%. What they mean by that is that there is a statistic, I can't say statistic, that 41% of trans people end up, you know, trying to off themselves. So saying they want me to join the statistic, it's not really a nice thing to read.
As a lesbian, do I think that the T should be included or discluded from the LGBT acronym? I go back and forth with this. I think that having the T in there does confuse people because it has nothing to do with sexual orientation, unless the person transitions in some way and then still dates somebody of the same gender, same sex.
Just because
that makes sense.
I don't really see how it's that confusing. The LGBT community isn't just for people that are gay.
I think the reason that trans people or transsexual people got connected to the LGBT people in the first place was at Stonewall. everybody was together. They were fighting for the same rights. I think that lesbians and gay men specifically already push the idea of a gender expression binary. Gay men tend to act or dress more effeminate, and lesbians tend to act and dress more, quote, masculine. And I think that trans people felt more included because at that point, I don't think that there were many people undergoing actual sex changes. I think that many of them were just, quote, cross-dressers.
Yeah, that's a completely fair point, to be honest. I've seen a bunch of people on Twitter arguing that the trans women at the Stonewall riots weren't actually trans women because they called themselves cross-dressers or transvestites. Back then, the word transgender wasn't really a thing. These people lived their lives as women. Just because they didn't specifically identify as transgender didn't mean that if they were born nowadays, they wouldn't be trans. These words just didn't exist back then. I'm not sure if I explained that very well, but it's kind of the same thing as in, like, when I was a kid, I identified as a tomboy because I didn't know that being trans was a thing. So back then, they would have called themselves cross-dressers, but they would have lived their lives as women.
I think now we have a much better understanding of what transsexualism is, and technically it is very different than sexual orientation. But I think at its very core, it came from the idea that we can be different and we can still be treated equally.
Yes, that's relatively respectful.
Oh, should LGB drop the T? This is something I'm hearing a lot of people talking about.
He's got a very wet mouth.
I would be lying if I said I didn't see where they're coming from. But for me personally, should we drop the T? The answer is no. Here's why. I totally understand people's exasperation with the trans lobby.
The trans lobby? Okay, look. I don't know, I just have a problem with, like, every trans person's existence being politicized whenever there's a conversation about trans people. Like, I hear these terms like the trans lobby, the transgender, in so many conversations about trans people. Like, what is our agenda? Like, the majority of trans people I know don't really want to get involved with politics because we know how that turns out. It's the same thing with a few years back, people saying the gays had an agenda to turn everybody gay. Like, it's not... I can't even explain it. I'm just gonna keep watching.
Many of us are just flat out exhausted by transmania.
Transmania. I feel like a lot of cis gay people have this exact view on trans people, and it's so hypocritical to me. Like, I'm sure 20 years ago, straight people were talking about gay mania and how crazy it is that there's all these gay people all of a sudden. Like, no, with acceptance and awareness, of course more trans people are gonna come out, and of course more trans people are gonna be loud because they've been pushed down for so many years. I'm so bad at talking! It just seems like a lot of cis gays nowadays are using the exact same ideas that straight homophobes were using 20 years ago. Like, oh, I'm so tired of these gays being out and loud. It's like, what do you expect from a community that's been pushed down for so long?
Especially when many of the things that they're pushing fly in the face of gay people being accepted.
Many of the things that trans people are pushing fly in the face of gay people being accepted. This just sounds so ridiculous. If you're talking about gay people being accepted, I'm sure you're talking about, like, straight people, you know, the majority of people accepting them. Surely the issue here is straight people being unaccepting, not trans people, you know, trying to advocate for their own rights. It's the same as the whole transgender thing. Oh, this feminine trans boy is stopping me from being accepted even though I'm a masculine trans boy. All these straight people, all these cis people, they won't accept me because of this person. It's like, no, these cis people won't accept you because they're transphobic. It's not this guy's fault over here because he's also trans. You can't blame trans people for homophobes not accepting you.
I mean, it's gotten to a point where it's so extreme that you have trans activists arguing that sexuality is a choice and you can choose who you're attracted to.
Okay, so when has anybody in the LGBT community that is not out of their mind argued that sexuality is a choice? I feel like this type of person doesn't actually bother to communicate with actual trans people, and they will just take what the media says and, like, they will just hear one dumb thing one trans person said and be like, this is what all trans people think. Of course, sexuality isn't a choice. Nobody's saying that, and if they are saying that, they're not in the right mind. It's just really irritating that there are some people out there that are just like, all trans people are crazy. Trans people are pushing for sexuality to be a choice. It's like, that's not, who's doing that? Who's doing that?
For many gay people, it feels like a bit of a bait and switch. You know, I just wanted to date dudes, and now I'm being told that I need to support toddlers having sex changes.
You can tell this guy just literally knows nothing. Like, you know nothing. By the way, the person at the beginning of this video, I'm assuming is trans. Why would you put someone like this on your platform? You can date dudes without thinking that toddlers need sex changes because, you know, nobody thinks that toddlers need sex changes. It is illegal for children to undergo sex changes. Nobody is fighting for toddlers to undergo sex changes. He's clearly just like It's like when you see someone who's fairly liberal, you know, they're pretty accepting of the LGBT community, and they're like, you know, like, I support trans people, but I just don't think it's okay for a 12-year-old to get their tits chopped off and start testosterone. Like, nobody is saying that should happen. Like, trans people don't want that. It's illegal for a 12-year-old to start testosterone, and it is illegal for a 12-year-old to get their tits chopped off. Like, where are you getting these ideas? Because they're not coming from the trans community.
And compelled speech laws, and I didn't agree to any of that. Gender and sexuality are two very different things, so should they have been combined in the first place? Maybe not. But the fact is, they are combined. Let's say we remove the T. Now it's just LGB. Okay, well, that still doesn't solve the root problem. The root problem is a radical, controlling, authoritarian ideology and an entire industry of special interest groups who have centralized power over our entire personhood. So simply scapegoating trans people for this entire ideology just doesn't solve the problem.
It doesn't solve the problem, I agree with you, but just like so many of the things you said are so stupid. Yes, I agree, trans people shouldn't be scapegoated. I just find it so hard to believe that you know what you're talking about, considering the, not a swear word, considering the rubbish you just said.
The fight isn't gay versus trans, it's liberty versus authority.
You're right, the fight isn't gay versus trans, so I don't know why you're so set on saying that trans people are this and trans people are that when they're just not.
It's individuality versus suffocating conformity. Logical trans people are our greatest friends and allies in this fight.
I hate this. I hate this term, logical trans people. How patronizing is that? Why don't you just say trans people? Like, I'm pretty sure the majority of us are logical. Pretty sure the majority of us don't want toddlers having sex changes. It's the same way that men patronize women, like in the workplace. A man could be like, oh, you're actually quite smart for a woman. What do you mean? The term logical trans person just insinuates that the majority of us aren't logical.
Because what reasonable gay people and reasonable trans people want is essentially the same thing, the right to be an individual. If you allow radical gender ideologues to taint the way that you view all trans people, you are letting them win.
How does this guy, how does he not know he's being a hypocrite? If you allow these radicals to determine how you view trans people, you are letting these people win. What, is that not exactly what you've just done? I appreciate that you don't think we should be kicked out of the community, but you know, you sound a bit silly. I'm sorry, my hair is a mess.
Dropping the T is not an idea I am actively against. However, I do also believe that there are many other letters that I am way more concerned with coming into the LGBT community than I am with trans groups.
Okay, first off, she's reading from a script. Let's hear what the letters she has an issue with are.
There are more groups, such as non-binary people, who I believe we need to advocate for research and evidence about to truly determine whether they belong here or not.
You know that non-binary people come under the trans umbrella? As in, like, the majority of non-binary people identify as trans? This just sounds so dumb. It just sounds a bit patronizing, to be honest. If I was non-binary, I'd be like, where's the evidence that you exist?
Especially as the radical non-binary people who are shown in the media tend to make trans people who have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria look like a joke.
Okay, so apparently it's non-binary people's fault for trans people looking like a joke now? I thought it was... Okay, we're going with that. You know that in order to transition, you need a diagnosis of gender dysphoria in most places? And if a non-binary person wants to transition medically, they need that diagnosis. Non-binary people also experience gender dysphoria. They just don't transition as in, like, from one end of the spectrum to the other. These people, like, I just have a real issue with people talking about things as if they know about them without actually knowing about them. The fact that you have a script and you still sound this... I'm not gonna be mean. I'm not gonna be mean.
There are also multiple sexualities, such as pansexuality and omnisexuality, that actively harm bisexuals, who I believe we, as a united community, need to take a stance against.
She thinks that bisexuals need to take a stance against pansexuals. It's just a different label for a different sexuality. There's some similarities. That doesn't mean you have to fight.
As us people who haven't been sucked into the welcome everyone attitude that has now been branded onto the LGBT community of fewer in numbers, I think dropping the T would complicate this section of the LGBT community further, and for that reason I think dropping the T is a conversation for the future and not the present.
So I'm fine with the T being in the community right now, but maybe in the future it shouldn't be. Why is this something that's being debated by people that clearly have no idea what they're talking about?
I would think that as a trans person I would be extremely offended and extremely affected by this LGB alliance wanting to kick out the T, but I'm not.
I'm not offended. I just don't understand how you can sit and watch these people being that stupid and not be like, hey, that's stupid.
I completely understand where they're coming from. A lot of these trans activists, They are so annoying.
Oh my god, go lick some more cis boots. This is so painful. There is a large portion of the trans community that are so they're so willing to put down the rest of their community in order to gain acceptance from people that probably wouldn't accept them if they didn't know them personally. Like, hey, yeah, I'm trans and you're a transphobe, but I'm not like those other crazy trans people, even though we both have the same thing. Like, yeah, these guys are annoying, right? I'm not annoying. Love me.
Listening to, so I completely understand that they don't want to listen to that anymore. But the thing is, we all have the right to speak our minds, and kicking the T out is literally stupid because not all trans people are like what you see in the media. And also, if we're playing along with kicking out the T, can you imagine leaving the T alone and there would be something called the T community? First of all, that's not gonna happen because we have to think about all the genders out there. So it would be called like T and B.
I'm sure the word you're looking for is trans. The trans community? What do you mean the T community? What are you talking about? NB, you know, non-binary, comes under the trans umbrella. Why is this? I don't understand why. How are people so confused? Like, how is this a view that people have?
Like, I don't know, but it's definitely gonna be a long-ass title. Demonizing the entire T will not do anything good. I think we should fight against radical ones, just like in any situation ever. Like, always fight radical people. Thank you guys for watching, and yeah, let me know what you think. I'm always curious to know what you think.
So here's the thing. I know people are gonna be like, "Oh, Noah's offended because he's an offended trans person." I'm not offended. I am just baffled, to be honest. The word I'm looking for this video is baffled. The fact that people that don't know what they're talking about make these videos is like, I am overwhelmed. This is not what I expected this video to be about. I thought this video was gonna be about, you know, like cis people being like, trans people should die. So at least it wasn't that, but I feel like this is more infuriating. I would genuinely rather sit here and get death threats from a cis transphobe than have to listen to a gay guy tell me that trans people want toddlers to get sex changes. Okay. I feel like Ariel's video was fine. The other two. So yeah, how do you feel about this video? Let me know in the comments. I want to know your opinions. I am sweating. But yeah, it's the end of the video. Have a good day. I don't. See you later, losers. Boom. 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 You know? Give your local toddler a sex change, why don't you?